Lupita became painfully aware of how she looked. Her short dress, the flat-heeled shoes, the old-fashioned hairdo. She had no glittering earrings or bracelets. "There's Raphael now, over there with Tammy," Salvador cried. Still holding her by the wrist, he hauled her along the edge of the floor to the opposite side of the room. A short, heavy-featured pocho stood next to a tiny black-haired girl, wearing a pale blue satin gown and a rhinestone tiara in her hair. "Raphael, this is my sister Lupita." Salvador took Tammy's hand and pulled her onto the dance floor. Raphael stared, unsmiling, at Lupita. Then he asked in a husky voice, "Do you want to dance?" "Sí." He walked onto the floor, and she scrambled after him. A moment later, they were dancing to La Salsa music. Lupita, feeling grateful for her dancing lessons, smiled tentatively once or twice, but Raphael did not look her in the eye. As the orchestra went into a second salsa tune, Lupita noticed that Raphael gazed over her shoulders at the other couples around them. He called out twice, "Hola, Rosita! Hola, Marina!" When the music ended, Raphael took Lupita by the elbow and steered her away from the other dancers who were waiting for the next tune. He led her to the row of wooden chairs against a wall. There, he bowed, said "Gracias," and sauntered away. Lupita looked about in panic. What was she to do now? Where was Salvador? She could not spot him or Lucky Ruiz in the throng of waiting dancers. They must be at the other end of the hall. There was no cause to be afraid, though. Salvador would soon see Raphael without her. Then he would come looking to see how she fared. See, it would be best to say exactly where she was. She might as well sit down. Except for one or two older women who were deeply in conversation on her left, she would be the only person seated in the long row of chairs. She would be easy to find. But Salvador did not come. No one Lupita knew came up to her. Some pochas in pretty gowns walked past her and went to in a door on her right. Lupita leaned over and saw a picture of a lady with a fan in her hand. Above the picture was the word "Señoritas." See, the room was a bathroom for ladies. Before long, the orchestra started to play again. This time, the music was slow and gentle, a dreamy tune. The lights on the hall dimmed, and the dancing couples who now embraced one another could scarcely be seen. Lupita sat in her chair while Pocho Yus walked past her, peering at her briefly, then continuing on their way. She stared through them, her face flaming, hoping none of them would ask her to dance. At last, the lights came back on full strength, and the band began to play more fast gringo dance tunes. Lupita stood up. She could see Lucky dancing, but she could not spy her brother at all. Ah, there he was, dancing with Tammy. Her tiara glittered ice-like in the overhead lights. Lupita wondered if she should get closer to Salvador, but she decided she better not. He would not like it if she did. Suddenly, Raphael danced by with a long-haired girl in a flame-red gown. He was smiling and talking to her, a different fellow from what he had been with Lupita. Watching them, Lupita felt her throat grow tight. See, Raphael had thought her skinny and ugly, and compared to the pochas here, she was. Her dress was short, and she wore her hair in Mexican braids, not flowy and loose. What did Aunt Consuelo know what pochas wore to bailes? Tears of misery rose in Lupita's eyes as she sensed a dark truth. Neither Salvador nor anyone else would come over to her. He and Lucky had known Raphael would not like her. Perhaps they had arranged ahead of time for her to spend the evening sitting in a chair. Salvador was not going to have his good time spoiled by his sister. Blinded by tears, Lupita stumbled into the empty ladies' room. Its window was open and she gulped the cold air. How fresh it felt after the warmth of the hall. Lupita went to the wash basin, turned on the cold water tap, and mopped at her eyes and cheeks with a damp paper towel. Looking at her image in the mirror, she stared at her swollen eyes. Never again would she cry over Salvador, she vowed bitterly. She no longer had a brother. Lupita crumpled the paper towel and threw it into the big metal basket. She opened the door and stepped into the crowded room. A blast of music greeted her as the band started a new tune. At that very instant, the music changed, faltering into discord and winding down to a slow, wailing finish. The dancers stopped for a moment into the pattern of waving arms and lifted legs. Something was wrong. Lupita froze, her eyes widening. What was it? All at once she heard a metallic braying sound, a shout, "La migra! La migra!" Words in English and Spanish thundered through a bullhorn. "We are the United States Immigration Service. Stay where you are. Do not run. No corres." La migra! Using her back and shoulders, Lupita pushed open the door behind her and slid into the ladies' room. A moment later, she hauled herself up the windowsill and threw her leg over it. Dropping to the ground, she crouched in a thicket of oleanders planted just out under the window. La migra. It had not come to the fields or the church or to the cinema or to the cafe where Salvador worked. It had come to the baile, where there would be many people, some of them wetbacks. Lupita bit her fist and wondered if Salvador had escaped. She waited for what seemed to be a long time before she heard automobile doors slamming and cars leaving. Was La Migra going away, or were some pochos leaving the dance? Could she come out now? No, better wait for a while. Lupita squatted in the bushes until she heard the orchestra start up again. As she was about to rise, she heard voices coming toward her. 2 men were speaking in Spanish. One was Lucky Ruiz. He said heavily, "Okay, Rafael. So La Migra rounded up Salvador. That was bad luck. I liked him." Lupita wanted to howl. Salvador had been caught. What she had feared since she had first heard of La Migra had happened. Lucky went on. "People in my grandfather's family are going to think that I'm responsible for that tonta sister of his. I couldn't find her in the hall. Where did you get rid of her? Maybe she's out here." The 2 pochos stopped in front of the oleanders. Lupita could see their feet. Rafael said, "I took her over to the chairs and left her there. Maybe La Migra got her too. It's not being able to speak English that gives them away." Rafael chuckled, obviously unconcerned about Lupita's fate. "I guess I'll have to take care of Tammy Mendoza now." An icy, shuddering rage swept over Lupita. What did these pochos know about the trouble she and Salvador had been through? What did they care? She rose out of the oleanders, parting them with her hands. "I am here, Lucio, Lupita Torres, the tonta wetback." Lucky jumped to hear the voice behind him. He turned, and Lupita went on. "It's too bad Salvador had to spoil your evening by getting caught. I don't want to stay here where you and Rafael are. Just take me to Aunt Consuelo's right now." Lucky cast a guilty glance at the other youth. "Rafael, go get Lupita's shawl. It's the black one. Tell Tammy and her sister that I'll be back later on to take them home." "Okay, Lucky, okay." Rafael hurried off, glad to be away from Lupita's accusing eyes. Minutes later, Lupita was sitting once more in the rear seat of the red convertible, wrapped in her aunt's shawl. Lucky put the key in the ignition. Then he turned around. "It happens all the time, Lupita. That La Migra catches wetbacks here in town. Your brother's a smart one. He will make his way here again. You wait and see." Lupita answered icily. "Senor Pocho, what do you know of how hard it is to get into the United States? You do not know what it is like to live in Tijuana and have no work. I am not so sure that Salvador would get back over the border again." Lucky turned back, started the car, and drove through Indio without speaking another word. Lupita let the cold night wind blow on her and stared at the sky. In front of the Ruiz house, she opened the back door and got out. Lucky roared off. There was a light on in the living room. Holding the shawl about her, Lupita went up to the front door and stepped inside. Aunt Consuelo was lying on the bed in the living room, listening to the radio. Irela lay beside her with her face to the wall. As Lupita entered, her aunt sat up and said, "Back so soon, Lupita? Did you have a good time?" "No!" Lupita took off the borrowed shawl and put it on the sofa. She said calmly, "La Migra came to the baile. They caught Salvador." "Ay de mí, Lupita!" "But they did not catch me." Standing in the middle of the floor, Lupita told her aunt what had happened. She did not mention Rafael. "Thanks be to God, Lupita, they did not get you too." Consuelo sighed. "Do not worry about Salvador. He will be turned loose in Tijuana." "See, I know. He will try to come back, but it will be hard. Very hard." Aunt Consuelo interrupted Lupita's thoughts by saying, "You will stay here with us and work with me in the fields?" "See, I will." She would have to go on living with Aunt Consuelo. Mamma would want her to, more than ever now that she was alone. Besides, where else could she go? Lupita doubted that Salvador would go home to Ensenada and tell Mamma that he had been caught and deported. No, he would stay in Tijuana and try again. But who knew if he would ever return to Indio? There were many Yankee towns he could go to. Tammy Mendoza could be replaced by another Pocha as quickly as Dorotea Ortega had been replaced by Tammy. Lupita shivered, thinking of what Rafael had said. Salvador and the others had been caught because they could not answer La Migra's questions in English. It was not their lack of cards, but their lack of English that had betrayed them. Aunt Consuelo, Lupita said, Salvador was caught tonight because he didn't know any English. I must learn. Consuelo nodded slowly. But you cannot go to school here, Lupita. No, I know that. But someone here could teach me English when I come back from the fields. Lupita kept silent, waiting for her aunt's reply. Would Consuelo realize that Lupita wanted to learn English for another reason, one equally as important, so she could get out of the fields and find work as a waitress, even earn more money, leave this house, be as lone and independent as the ear of a corn on the stalk until she had enough money to go home to Mexico? After a moment, her aunt said, Si, Elvio or Catarina could teach you. They taught you how to dance. I will speak to them about it. Gracias, Aunt Consuelo. What more could she ask? She had the answer for which she had hoped. I will need a book in Spanish and in English, Aunt Consuelo. I will pay for it if someone will buy it for me. I will ask Emilio to get you a book. Now go to bed, Lupita. You look very tired. See, I am tired. As Lupita turned to go into the bedroom, her aunt slapped Irela gently on the bottom. You will get up now, Irela, and go to your own bed. See, Mama. Irela rose and padded into the bedroom next to Lupita's. An hour later, Lupita lay sleepless, waiting for Catarina to come home. How could she sleep? There was so much to think about. Would Elvio and Catarina be willing to help her learn English? It was hard to tell them. Perhaps they would be more enthusiastic if she promised to pay them for their time and trouble. How difficult everything was. How hard to make a shelf so she would not be hurt by so much. How hard not to weep. As the tears came stinging to her eyes, Lupita heard the door open. Was Catarina home from the cinema? No. The truck had not returned yet. Someone had crept silently into the small room. Lupita, said a small voice in the darkness. Let me in bed too. It was Irela. Lupita sighed softly and flung back the blankets. What did Irela want? And why had she brought into her bed with her? Hard, cold, slick things that jabbed into Lupita's side. Lupita, pull the blankets up over our heads. Are you that cold? No. Pull the blankets up. Lupita did as Irela wanted. She'd probably come with some of her favorite toys to keep her company. All at once, the deep dark under the blankets vanished in a bright yellow light. Irela held her mother's flashlight and a thin, flat book. Lupita recognized it as one of Esmeralda's, the youngest Ruiz cousin. Irela flopped over onto her stomach and shone the flashlight on the book. She opened it to her first page and pointed to a brightly colored picture of a boy, a girl, and a dog. Pointing to the dog, Irela said, This is a perro. The word for him in English is dog. Por favor, say dog. Dog, Lupita repeated. Bueno, Irela nodded and went on. The muchacho is a boy. Say boy. Boy. Bueno, the muchacha is a girl. Her dress is roja. It is red. Girl, red. Gracias, Irela. Gracias, Irela Ruiz, profesora, Irela corrected. Sí, Irela Ruiz, profesora, Lupita repeated. She caught her cousin in a hug. Irela wiggled momentarily, then pointed to a boy in the picture and said, Pay attention. His shirt is white. White, repeated Lupita happily. Sí, she would learn English now. Irela had pointed herself Lupita's profesora. Let the other Ruiz cousins laugh at them both. That would mean nothing to her or Irela. Both of their tomorrows were sure to be better.